Hello and thank you for joining me today. I'm Jan Clothier from Thinking Stamping and I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator from New Zealand. What I'll be doing for you today is a tutorial around this card that I made for a design team that I'm on, the As You See It challenge. It was a sketch challenge with a split panel going vertically and then a sort of a cluster at the bottom, and so I've chosen to use the Ranunculus Romance bundle from the January to June 2022 mini catalogue, which is a set I love because, you know, I'm a very Versailles girl, and so this is kind of like very Versailles but with dies, so I really like it. I'll talk you through it and let's get started. So I started with a soft succulent card base. It's 14.8 centimetres tall and scored at 10.5. And the first thing I did was I got the script looking stamp from their set and I just inked up and stamped at the corners and down where I felt the diagonal lines were going to go, because I just wanted there to be a little bit of interest going on the card base. Then what I've done is I started with a sheet of basic white. This is my sheet for the inner, so it's 10 by 14.3, but of course because the design here has this split, the front panel is a bit shorter. It was 13.5, and because I like to cut before I emboss, because I think you get a cleaner cut, what I did was I cut that into the two triangles, and then I popped it into the Hive 3D embossing folder and embossed it after I'd cut it. So those I'm going to attach to the front straight away because, well, just because there's no reason not to really. So bit of glue. Now I'm going to use slightly more glue than I normally do. I'm going to put some in the middle just because I'm not attaching a flat piece of paper to a flat piece of paper. I'm attaching a textured piece of paper. So just to make sure I get a nice seal, I've used a little bit more glue and I've put some in the middle. And again, and you know I do like my glue because I do like to be able to wiggle it and get it nice and straight. So there's our base already done, and I'm just going to pop that aside and look at some of the other things which are happening in this card. Now I want to talk about the dies because you can see up the top here I've already cut out two of this die, which gives you this lovely little spray, and you'll be able to see that I've got, what I've done is I've used the chalk marker to add in some little centres just to give it a little bit more life and a little bit more movement. So I've got those which are eventually going to go along my spray. These leaves are just gorgeous and I love them. I was tempted to just make lots and lots of leaves. I love the little detailing on them, so they're going to tuck in. But it's the flower. Okay, so the flower, if you use this die alone, what you get is this, a beautiful cutout, and you could see how you could use that just all by itself. And if you use this die, you get a nice shape, and you can see that I've used both of those to layer up. If you use them together, and to make it easy to work out where they go together, I've put a little mark. If you use them together, then you get the cutout shape from that to that, which is fantastic, beautiful. So there's a couple of things going on here. In order to give some extra depth to the finished flower, I've used polished pink, that card colour I've used is polished pink, and I'm just going to add in some colour at the centre because I want it to look a bit deeper in the centre. So just going to add a little bit of ink to the middle, and then I'm just going to, perhaps we have a bit more. Okay, pop that aside. until we need it. And I'm going to tell you how I made this sort of variegated looking background, because I did want it to look not just a solid shape, I wanted there to be a bit more movement in it. So I started with a piece of shimmery cardstock, and I used shimmery cardstock because I'm going to get it wet. So I used my little silicone mat just to protect my work surface. Okay, acrylic block, and oops, this is Blushing Bride. So I've added, just gonna ink up some Blushing Bride. I'm going to add in some polished pink. And then I'm going to get my spritzer, my Stampin' Up spritzer, and I'm just going to wet the ink enough that it starts to run. And you can see it is starting to run there. And so then I'm just going to smoosh. Looks a bit of a mess, don't panic, it dries pretty well. And if you think you've got too much, you can just use an old cloth and just, okay. And in the tradition of all good cooking shows, here's one I prepared earlier. So you can see this is the one I did before, and then I just looked for the part of it where I could see there was a mix of colours, like I could have done it over there. But then once it's dry, and it will dry in the sun or in the air in about 10 minutes. If you really want to, you can use the heat tool to zap it up. And then once it's dry, you just pick a piece, you use the outline and just cut out the piece that you want to use. And of course you've got bits for other things if you want to later on. So the flower itself's quite easy. The trickiest bit is actually lining it up to where, there we go, lining it up. And I'm just going to use, I'll just get back my little mat, and I'm just going to put a few little dobbles of glue around, and then just a few little bits. And because I don't want it to ooze much, I'm just going to kind of give it a little dust off there, and then I'm just going to press them together to make that really pretty little ranunculus flower. Now, what I say to my class people is don't stick things down until you've tried it out to see how it's going to look. So I'll adopt that strategy here. So I want some dark foliage along the split. I'm just cutting off these tails because they're not going to be seen underneath the ranunculus. So I'm just making my life a bit easier by getting rid of those. And then my ranunculus is going to go on top. Nope, I need to spread that out a little bit. Now, I am in this one following the split a bit more than I perhaps did on the sample card, but that's right. You know yourself, when you do things a second time, they really ever turn out exactly like the first time. And that is both the joy and the terror of making your own cards. Okay, so a bit more, just little dabs. You don't need much. Okay, if I'd been really worried about how far apart these things should go, I would have used a pencil to mark the ends. But in this instance, I'm not too bothered about placement, overall placement, so I'm just going by memory. But as I say, if you're bothered about exactly how far apart to do them, then use a pencil, because again, it's not going to be hidden, it's not going to show because it's going to be hidden underneath the flower. Okay, so So now we've got our background foliage looking nice. And I'm just going to use my bone folder to press down on them because my fingers are a little bit sticky from the glue. Mainly because I forgot to bring my tweezers to my filming station, so I had to do without them. Okay, so now I'm going to use dimensionals to pop up this flower. Yeah, I hate saggy middles, so we'll have one there as well. Okay. We pop it, we'll pop there. Now, I also have already done the sentiment, so the set has a number of sentiments, and you know, if you have the joy of making your own cards, you can pick whichever one you want. I used the just because well, I just did, but I could have used hello, or I could have even got a happy birthday or something from another set. Now, by sheer fortune or good luck, or maybe good design, I'm not quite sure, the just because stamp fits perfectly inside the lovely little flag end stitched die out of Tasteful Labels. So I used that to cut the sentiment, and while I was at it, I cut another same shape from Evening Evergreen and the Soft Succulent. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to layer them up a bit so that the sentiment has got some colour behind it and is bringing in some of the colours of the design. So I'm just going to, layer up that one. Now, you don't have to, I've used 3 colours. Obviously, I've used 2 backgrounds. I mean, if you like it like that, you could just do one. It's entirely up to you. You could use either colour. I am going to use both. But again, that's just a design choice that you make as you're going along. So I'm going to do that just for a bit extra. I'm using all my wiggle room now. Okay, so I've got that going on. Now, because this flower is already up on dimensionals, I'm only going to put a dimensional at that end where it's hanging off the flower, and then I'm just going to use some glue on that end. And where am I going to pop it? I'm going to put it about there. Oops, I'm going to line up my card with the grid paper so I've got a better chance of assessing whether or not my sentiment is straight. And then to just finish off, I'm going to add in some of these polished, some of these gems from the 2021 to 23 In Colour Jewels collection. And I don't know whether it ever happens to you, but for some reason, you know, here I am from classes and I've got only pink ones left. Obviously my class people didn't like the pink ones as much, or maybe whatever we were doing wasn't colour coordinated with pink. But I'm just going to, since I've got a whole bunch of them, I'm just going to build myself a little flower centre out of these In Colour Jewels, which I love. I think they go with the new In Colours really, really well. And who doesn't love a bit of bling? So, in fact, I have one lady who comes to my card classes who doesn't think a card is complete until we've added something sparkly. So sometimes she gets a little bit extra that other people don't get, because she loves her bling so much. Okay, so pop that in there, and there we have it. It's looking pretty good replica, I think. Oh, I see what I did there. I also added in, and this is optional, I added in some Evening Evergreen ones. I think that in this instance I'm not going to. I think it looks fine like it is, but you know, again, if you're making this card, by all means do what I've done here and add in some of the Evening Evergreen In Colour Jewels as well. Now, the final thing is, you know, I always like to do an inside, so I now am going to very quickly do that as soon as I locate where I put my, there it is, my piece that I've got for my inner. And all I did was a very quick little set of collage stamping. The thing that drew me to this set really is this beautiful image of the ranunculus. Isn't it gorgeous? Oh, look at all that extra ink. Hopefully we get away with it. Okay, so I'm going to stamp that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let the ink transfer. Beautiful. Isn't that a gorgeous image? It's just so satisfying. I love it. Okay. My second favourite image is probably this little scripty stamp. I'm just going to make sure that, yep, I've got it the right way up, because as you know I don't really like putting the stickers on the stamps. So I'm just going to do one there, and then to just give it a bit of punch, I'm going to add in the little postage stamp in polished pink, just to give it some lift. And that is going to be my inside. A little bit of glue and pop it in. Oops, don't even need my wiggle room. And then I do like to finish off with just a nice solid bone crease with the bone folder. Okay, and there we have it. A lovely stamp that uses the Ranunculus Romance stamp set and the matching Ranunculus dies, and you can buy that as a bundle from the January to June 2022 mini catalogue. If you'd like more information about this card, I have information on my blog and my Facebook page, the details of which will pop up on the end card of this video. And if you live in New Zealand and you'd like to shop with me, there are links to my online store on both of those. And if you like what you've seen, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you get to see the other things I've done. Thanks very much for joining me.